cowboy hoodie on.
You know.
What's
And
up,
we're
y'all? We're back. Hello, everybody. We are back with another live show of Real Talk, Real Growth, where we're here to help you guys out while we help ourselves out as well through transparency and intellectual dialogue to help you with your relationships and personal development. I'm excited to be back here today. I'm Miles Harris. They call me Miles the Millennial.
And it's your boy Rex Howard Jr., the relationship coach, therapist, personal development guy. Let's get it.
Hey, and this Coach Lauren J, your favorite marriage and relationship coach. I'm so excited to be back. I'm smiling all
Yep.
hard.
Guys, we've been out for a few weeks, man. Holidays, weather, traveling, everything. Life just, lives. And so we intentionally, this wasn't by accident, guys. It was an intentional break for us to be able to enjoy our families and all the things that we had going on. And we've been prepping, and we're so excited to be back with you guys today. We got a really great topic that we're going to be discussing. Coach, you want to hit them with the topic for today?
Sure. Since I came with this topic for today, huh? Got to go
Yep.
back to the great topic. So tonight we're talking about behind closed doors, how to heal what's holding your relationship back this year. Because we do not want you going into 2025 with them same problems
Yeah.
you had in 2024, 2023. We don't want the carryover from this.
Yep.
So tonight I'm really excited about us getting behind the closed doors. And getting behind the curtain and really having real talk conversation about what our relationships are secretly struggling with. And so my ask for tonight is that you share our live, tag somebody that needs to, tag your friends that need it. And for 2025, we have officially launched um our email subscribe list so that always know what we're dropping, what's coming up, and you stay reminded about what we're doing. So stay connected to the crew. So click the link in our bio. I'll make sure that I drop it here in our chat, the link to subscribe. So make sure that you subscribe so you can stay connected to the crew.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is going to be a powerful topic. Um, we have questions for today that we're going to do. If I'm correct, right? That's the way we're going to go. Um, so Rex, are you the one leading the questions for today? Did you come up
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
Right?
Let's do
I know
it.
you're ready with the question.
Absolutely.
So we're going to hop into this conversation, right? Behind closed doors, how to heal what's hurting, right? Hurting you, hurting your relationship. And we're going to get deep. We're gonna get deep with this because you don't want the things that have been holding you back to continue to keep you from your growth in this new year. So we're gonna hop right into it. Rex, I want to have you fire these questions out at us and just let's really have a great convo on this today.
Absolutely, let's do it. So, question number one is going to be coming from the standpoint of self awareness and personal growth, right? So, the question is I'm going to say it twice. What are some common blind spots people have about their own behavior that may unknowingly sabotage their relationships? And how can they begin to address them? So, once again, what are some common blind spots people have about their own behavior that may unknowingly sabotage their relationships? And how can they begin to address them? And, Brother Miles, I want you to go ahead and crank this bad boy up.
Yeah, some common blind spots that people have about themselves. Um, I think we have a lot of, I think we have a hard time recognizing whenever things are going on that our response to how we've been hurt is just as important as to what hurt us as well, right? Whenever you're in the process of trying to come to resolution, because a lot of times we feel that because we've been hurt by what something our partner has said or something that's been done to us, that we're warranted to react however it is that it made us feel. And there's a level of maturity that has to take place, right? And a level of accountability over your own actions that has to take place where you get to a point to where you say, yes, this happened to me. But before I react the way it's making me feel, and now we're going to have multiple problems compounding on each other, I need to take a second. And instead of reacting, I need to think about how to respond. How do I communicate the way these things actually made me feel? And then be able to express it to my partner, express it to the person who's hurt me, And that way we won't be compounding it. Because a lot of times we're in a position where somebody hurts our feelings and then we lash out at them. And now, whereas you're sitting here telling this person, well, the only reason I'm lashing out is because you did such and such to me. They're not even hearing what they did wrong because they feel like you just talked to them disrespectful. And so I think that's a big area and something that I've been working on, right? Is a soft answer turns away wrath, right? And so it's really big that when something harms you, that you're not so in the blind about what happened that you think that you're warranted to respond however you want, and that your responses don't hold any merit as to resolving the problem.
That's powerful. That's powerful, Coach Long. What do you got to say about that, or what would you like to add to that?
Mm, um, I would say that I think one of the biggest blind spots is that we think that we are over things that we are still under.
That's good.
Yeah, and it shows up later in our relationships, and oftentimes we think that we're over certain things because we haven't had to utilize that muscle. For us gym folks, you
Yeah.
have to utilize that muscle in a while, so you think it's strong, like you think like I should be straight there.
Yeah.
So
Hmm. Yep.
that's my thoughts on it.
Okay, so how can that be addressed?
Mm. Well, first, I would say understanding how your partner likes to be maybe challenged is a word, or um yeah, I would probably stick with the word challenge. Like, how does your partner like to be challenged? And so I would address it by first just being open and honest, but also being constructive in your wording. Because, and this may be a lot, this is definitely a lie for another night, but a lot of times we can be destructive versus constructive in our language. And so that a lot of times cannot leave space for people to even take in what you have to say, and to always ensure that you're delivering your message in love and that the other person feels love. So you may need to say, I'm telling you this because I love you, or I'm telling you this from a loving space because this is something I'm seeing. And the thing about blind spots is they oftentimes cause accidents.
Hmm.
It's not the stuff that you saw coming. You think
Yeah.
about it, when we have a car accident, it's because of what was in our blind spot. And then the car dealerships got smarter and they put the little orange light on the side for some of us who got the little orange light that come up when something's in your blind spot, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to let your partner know that this is not me trying to destroy or destruct who you are, but construct the best version of you.
I think that's I think that's actually really, really good. And something I'll add to that as far as a blind spot, because the question says, what are some common blind spots people have about their own behavior that may unknowingly sabotage their relationships? And it's the feeling of not being enough, right? It's the insecurities that's underneath the surface, right? You have a lot of people, and I'm going to speak from a male perspective. A lot of men may not feel like they're enough if they're not making enough. A lot of men may not feel like they're enough if they're not if they don't feel attractive enough. A lot of men may not feel like they're enough if they aren't taking the proper trips that everybody else on social media is taking with their partners. A lot of men may not feel like they're enough if they have an absolutely beautiful woman that looks good in whatever she puts on, that talks nice, that carries herself well, but they just may not be where they want to be in life. So when they don't feel like they're enough, the way they self sabotage it is messing it up, right?
Hmm.
Causing arguments, conflict, or disagreements towards them, making it feel like they're the problem when in our reality it's their lack of confidence and it's the insecurities or the lack of security that they have within themselves, right? So the question is, how can they begin to address these blind spots? Is really doing a heart check, a reality check. The areas that caused you conflict in your last relationship. How did I feel when my partner dressed in this? How did I feel when my partner said something about taking a trip, but I knew I couldn't pay for it? How did I feel when I personally looked at my savings account and my savings wasn't exactly where I felt like they should be? How did I feel when I was at the dinner table with my guys and they were talking about real estate and they were talking about investing? And hell, I'm barely paying rent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How did I feel in these moments and actually starting to address that feeling and
Yeah.
why am I in this phase? Or why I'm in this state. And if this is a season for me, what will it take for me to get out of this season versus trying to attach yourself with a woman that is looking for a project, and you are the perfect image for him because she knows she can pour into you, but because you're not pouring into yourself, you
Mhm.
still don't feel like you're enough in those type of situations. So I think that's a major blind spot that men have, or just people have in general.
That's good, Rex. And what you make me think, even with everything at every point that everybody is made, one of the things that it makes me think about is you have to also be open with your partner about that, right? About the things that are hindering you, the fact that I don't feel adequate in certain areas, the fact that I'm sensitive to this subject because something happened to me when I was in high school and I've always kind of felt a way about it. I've been insecure about this. Like, tell the story and tell the reason why, so that way your partner understands, because I think a lot of times in partnerships you get that there's something about a particular area in your partner that kind of ticks them off easily when it doesn't make sense as to why something that simple should tick them off. You didn't say nothing that inherently is a problem, but for them it's a problem. And that's where you really need your partner. You have to ask questions on one on your side and make a comfortable space for them to express it, but two, you need your partner to be able to meet you halfway and tell you. And if it's you with the trauma, expressing to your partner, like, this is where this comes from, and this is why I feel this way. Because once they understand that, whenever that, my lady has done that for me, I'm very careful now around whatever that topic is related to. I know that when this topic comes up, I need to address this a certain way so that I don't trigger her, right? And she knows the same thing. But if you can't express to your partner, it's like that scene in Bad Boys 2 when they're on the army base in the sand and there's landmines all over, but they don't know where they're at, right? And so your partner's trying to navigate a hidden landmine field, and they don't know what it is that's going to set it off at any point. But when you tell the story, it's like uncovering those landmines, and they can walk around them and be able to still get to safety where you guys can have resolution and avoid conflict. Because they understand where your particular triggers are.
That's actually really good, and it reminds me of a conversation or a coaching call that I had today. Right,
Mm.
this young lady, her partner told her, "Hey, I need you to boss up. I
Mm.
need to get your life together. I need you to show up in these areas, and I can't show up for you until you show up for me how I need you to in these moments." So in other
Mm.
words, she was just asking him for vulnerability and transparency. But he was like, I can't be vulnerable with you until you boss up. I can't be vulnerable with you until you show me that you're good enough. Right.
Mm.
And so one thing about that, and I want both of y'all's perspectives. So Miles, the question for you is, if a man has an issue with putting the responsibility of his own actions on somebody else and he's waiting on her conditions to be on point before he shows up, how can he overcome that? And then from a woman's perspective, Coach Lauren, if you have a man that's putting his responsibility on you as a woman to show up before he can show up for you, what would you say to that young lady about staying in that relationship or trying to fight for it? So that's twofold question that I want you guys to answer.
Man, look, okay. I think that is a trauma response and a cop out. You can't put how you show up in the relationship, who you are, quote unquote, on who somebody else is, right? We've talked about this before when we've talked about these trends that go on in the world. Like, everybody wants to be a soft girl, but they say, like, oh, I can't be a soft girl until I find me a masculine man, right? That's BS. If a man said to you, if said to women, like, I can't be a leader until I find a following woman. Like, no, you are what you are, right? You
Yeah.
have a self identity that you have created for yourself and that you develop, right, on a daily basis. And for you to sit there and say that I can't be this man, that of who I quote unquote am, unless you're that, then it's not really who you are. It's performative, right? It's really something that you're doing because you think you'll receive something in return rather than it actually being inside of you, right? And so I would say that if as a man you are going about your relationship that way and dating that way, your marriage that way, and saying that I won't be this unless you're that, you are not operating in how God designed you to even be in the domain of that relationship in the first place. Because if you're the leader, if you're supposed to be the spiritual head in that household, If you're supposed to be the one that sets the standard, then what you're setting a standard for is I'm only going to be good if you're good to me.
Yeah.
And that's not good enough because there's going to always be days where somebody ain't good, right? Where
Yeah.
people can't show up as a plus version of themselves. Can you love them the same way regardless? And so real relationships are built on when you're not at your best, when things are ugly and not as pretty, I still will show up as my best for you and give you my best that I can give in that moment because I love you that much. And that's how you extend grace. That's how your partner feels a sense of comfort to where they can also relax and show up as their best self when their traumas arise because you've set a standard that they now feel like, you know what, if he can do it when I was doing all this, then I can do it as well. You'll get more out of it if you show up as that version versus as saying, until you do it, I ain't doing it.
You know, that's so powerful. And one thing I want to add to that is it gives a man an excuse not to show up, not to perform, not to be authentic, and not to love, right?
Mhm.
Whenever he puts the responsibility on his partner. If
Mhm.
I only can be vulnerable if you are showing up, I only can be emotional if you are doing this. In other words, I'm going to have all this resentment. I'm going to have all these tallies. So if you aren't performing like I feel like you should perform, then I'm going to have a reason to not love you. I'm going to have a reason to not respect you. And anytime you come to me about why I'm not doing this for you, you're going to come back and say, well, it's because you're not doing this for me.
Mhm.
Right. So if your actions or decisions are predicated upon what somebody else is doing, then you will never show up and be authentic. You'll never be transparent. They will never know the real you. And
Mhm.
it's almost like you're really faking the funk. Your identity is based on absolute BS because
Mhm.
the way you're showing up isn't showing up at all. Like it's almost like you're halfway in the door and you're halfway out.
Yeah.
Coach, what you
Yeah.
got?
I would almost question, does he want to be a leader or be led?
Mhm.
Mm,
Mhm.
Because that's not a leader. You
Mhm.
know, are you in this relationship because you want to be the leader or because you need to be led?
Yeah.
And I will say this to a woman that may be in that kind of relationship you have been gaslighted into, um, that that is a clear red flag that this man does not know himself
Yeah.
yet, and he's looking for identity in you. And quite honestly, if you stay in that relationship, you're now his god,
Mm.
and
mm,
Mm.
now his success and his well-being and who he is predicated on your power
Yeah.
and your reliance, and that is very draining. I was having a conversation actually with my mom this morning, and my devotional was around changing your thoughts will change your life. And I made the comment to her. I said, dragging people who don't want to go where you're headed is very draining.
Yeah.
And like, as a woman, I wouldn't desire that. And I know that there are women that are in those types of relationships because they do try to control the narrative, because they are afraid of, maybe things going back the way it was from past relationships. And so they think this is a way to kind of sure sink it, if you will, like a sure, perfect way to make this work. But let me tell you, that is so far from it. And you'll get exhausted very easily
Yeah.
because, quite honestly, most women can't pick a man up, and
Yeah.
if you can pick him up, you ain't trying to pick him up and drag him that far.
right. Well, one thing Myra Goda says, if you have to drag them in, you got to drag them around. Then
Mhm.
you're going to always be dragging them. And
Mhm.
one thing that you don't want is like this can be for man or woman. One thing you don't want to feel is that if I don't perform at my best, if I am not my absolute best, then my partner is not going to show up for me, or my partner is not going to want me. And then now you're constantly thinking, like, even on your bad days, you got to fake the funk and act like you're good so that your partner will stay. So
Yeah.
now you're not operating or performing based off of love; it's off scarcity, and that's
Mhm.
something Miles and I have spoke on the podcast before. When I had to operate out of fear that you may leave me, then I have
Mhm.
this anxiety for my relationship. I'm walking on eggshells. Everything that I'm doing or saying is very strategic, versus
Mhm.
me being authentic with myself and with my partner and showing up how I feel that day.
That's real. That's real. I think
That's
about it like
good.
this. I think that a lot of people treat marriage like it's a checking account, right? Like I put it in and I get it out. Whatever I put in, it should still be there, and I'm gonna take it when I want. It's very transactional, multiple purchases a day. It just is what it is, right? Not a lot of growth. When marriage is really an investment account, right? What you put in, especially what you put in early and on a continuous basis, matters the most because it compounds, right? And so if you think about how a compound curve works, it starts out very flat, and it doesn't seem like it's really producing much. But at a certain point, it hits a part where all that work that's been poured in starts to take on momentum, and it rises really fast, really quick. But you can't stop pouring into it. If you stop pouring into it, or if you say, I'm only going to put money into this account when it's convenient for me, then you miss out on what the real returns can be. And we have to start looking at our relationships as the biggest investments that we're ever going to make in our life, right? Outside of the God you serve, the person you choose to be in a relationship with and marry is the biggest decision you'll make in your life. And so you have to realize that even on bad days, even if you can only pour in $5 to that brokerage account, put it in there, right? Because it builds the habit that one day is going to be the difference between when you look back in your life, it being worth it and your money sitting in a checking savings account and never growing on its own.
Man, what's thing that's so powerful about that? And then we'll go to the next point because you know us, we can stay on one thing for a very long time, right? So I'm recently been reading the book Psychology of Money, right? And then a major part of the book has been talking about is compounded interest, but really compounded potential. And I'm gonna read exactly from it, and this relates to money relationships as well. It says compounding only works if you give an asset years and years to grow. 1 year of growth may never produce or show much progress. 10 years can make a meaningful difference, and 50 years can create something absolutely extraordinary. That's why when you hear a lot of couples and you ask them, like, how long have you been together? And they say, well, 30 plus years. And they say, well, how many years of that was great? It was like, they always say, well, the first 5 to 10 years was rough. Right. It wasn't until year 15 where we really start getting together. Then year 20, we start taking it up a notch. And by year 30, we're at a whole different level. It takes time to grow. But because we live in this generation where everybody wants instant gratification now, we want the best relationship now. We want the best communication now. We want to feel amazing, and we want to have all the luxuries that money can buy now. We don't allow compound interest or compound potential to even grow. And if you have somebody that's pushing you to be somewhere faster where you want to be, then it's like you can't even appreciate the small steps that you guys are getting to. Perfect example. I have a couple. When they first came into my office, they were like, Rex, I want marriage, but my partner, it feels weird about marriage because they grew up in a household where their parents got divorced, right? We continued to work on communication. We worked on values. We worked on morals. And I was pouring into them about building and developing the relationship. 6 months later, they were having a conversation around what marriage could potentially look like, right? 8 months later, they were talking about potentially getting engaged in the coming months. And now they're at the point where they just got through buying a ring. And the young lady that had her mind set on not getting married at all, she's like, well, hell, since we've been showing up and putting in the work, and my partner's been showing up for me in a different way than I see my dad show for my mom, I have a different perspective about this. That happened over like 10 months. Let's just say shoot again month 2 or month 3. Right. So it's compounded interest and compounded potential that you have to put into your relationship. So what you just said about not looking at it as a checking account, but look at it as an investment account is absolutely golden.
Yo, that's good, y'all.
I want to add this, and then I'm gonna drop mic here. As you were talking about, it made me think about what's your a principle versus a rule, and that's really the thing. Like, do we like when we think about principles? And I literally pulled this up as you guys were talking because I had to, and it says principles and rules are both guidelines that help govern behavior and decision making, but they are different in their scope and flexibility. Principles are broad. Their fundamental beliefs are values that guide actions and decisions in a more general sense. They provide a framework for making ethical choices and can be applied to a variety of situations. But rules, on the other hand, are specific concrete directives that dictate specific actions or behaviors in a given context. And so I do believe that your relationship has to have principles and rules.
Mhm.
And so when we think about the rule is, when I get this income, I'm putting 10% in a savings. Like, what is the rule? The budget has a rule. You have this the 70-20-10. You've got the 50 50
30,
30.
20.
Yeah, you have rules. But those two rules, if you're doing the 70-20-10 rule, typically those are people who their needs are at a higher expense, like they have more need, and so
Yeah.
they need to have more of their income going toward that, right?
Mhm.
So they're kind of over leveraged, and your people on that 50-30-20 rule,
Mhm.
they're a little more relaxed. They're living at 50% of their income when it comes into concerns of what are their needs, right?
Yeah.
And how much are they generating? But you live by a rule. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people don't live by rules or principles, and that is why they don't know how to stay in bounds.
Yeah. That's
That's
good.
actually that's actually really, really good. All right, guys. So before we go to the next question, do we have any comments or do we have anything that we need to bring up?
Couple comments, but nothing that I think we need to address. Just shout out to you guys for your comments. If you have questions or anything you want to ask, drop them down below. If you have commentary that you want to add it down below. Shout out to you, Just Jay Harper, for your comments.
Perfect, perfect. So next question is going to fall into the communication and emotional connection category. And the question is, what does healthy communication look like in relationships? And how can someone shift from defensive or reactive communication to a more constructive dialogue? One more time. What does healthy communication look like in relationships? And how can someone shift from defensive or reactive communication to more constructive dialogue? And Miles went first the first time. So, Coach, if you're in position, I want you to go first this time.
Yeah, sure. So it goes back to, I guess, what I was talking about around the constructive and destructive. So communication. So when we think about the foundation of building a home, and Pastor Teray actually talks about this Sunday, I think it was, on his sermon, and he was talking about how the foundation of the home is one of the most expensive portions of building a house. But the foundation is, although it is one of the most expensive portions of building the house, it is also the part that is most unseen. But if you have a shaky foundation, then you have a shaky home. And it's the same thing with our conversations. So when we're having conversations, we have to first decide, are you trying to be right about your partner or right with your partner? Because some people only want to have the conversation because they're wanting to win today, right? Is this competitive edge type of situation, is this egotistical thing, and your ego cannot reside where a team is supposed to be. So that's one. And then number two, assessing, is this going to move the person forward? I don't want to have a conversation that's not going to move you forward, because it's either going to do one or two things. Either it's going to move you forward or it's going to take you backwards. That's the only option. And so you got to decide with your words, are you going to let your words be a bridge or a knife? Because that matters. And a lot of times we have not thought about what we really want to talk about. We haven't planned the conversation. For me, if I need to have what I call a moving forward conversation, I guarantee you I'm not having that conversation just like off rip. I'm not. I'm going to take a day. I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to really identify, what am I really upset about? Out of this, what is the goal that I want to walk away with that makes this conversation fruitful to me? And then identifying, okay, what are some of those key things that really, really upset me that maybe I haven't identified? Because sometimes the issue is not your partner, it's you. Yeah. So you got to be able to sit back and really study it. And then most importantly, the last but not least, the goal needs to be to gain an understanding and to be understood. And that is what healthy communication looks like, is when we can both walk away either getting an understanding or being understood. And that comes with being slow to speak, being quick to listen, and being slow to anger. Because the moment you allow anger to step in, now you've just made it about you. And it's no longer about the team. And everything that comes out of it is going to be about you being the victim and you finding the reason to blame. And people that blame live in bondage. I'm gonna say that one more time for somebody in the back. People that blame live in bondage.
Yeah.
So if all you can do is blame, then we got to assess what bondage are you really living under, because that is really the problem. And you'll have your partner solving for a solution that you don't even want.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
That's good.
That's very good.
You know,
You got Miles.
Lauren hit on most of it, like pretty much everything. I'm just gonna say it my version, and I'm gonna give a little personal story. I think the first thing that you have to understand is healthy communication is patient. To Lauren's point, it's understanding, and it makes a person feel understood. That was my first thing that I wrote down. You have to understand what is the goal of the conversation in the first place. What is the goal of a healthy conversation? And I think that most of the time when people get frustrated, get angry, get upset, yell, whatever, it's because they don't feel like they're being understood. And most of the time people think that being understood, and when we're not really, really deep in our emotions and not thinking about how feelings work, we think that that means you being able to either repeat back what I said or agreeing with what I said. And if you can't do one of those two things or both of those two things, then you don't understand me. But most people will feel understood. They just wouldn't even know this. But you can even play this. Everybody watching this, you can play this with people when you have a tough conversation. If you cater to a person's feelings of how they feel and tell them, like, I understand how this made you feel. I apologize, and be quick to apologize for any way that you could have come off with a misconception. Whether you agree with them or not, a person will feel 10 times more understood than if you said, oh yeah, you're right, but you really don't believe that, because they can read through that. Emotions always have to follow suit in a healthy communication and be calmed before any form of resolution or solution can take place. And too many times we want to jump to the final step and skip through all the emotional navigation that has to take place for you to get there. So you have to be patient. Now, let's talk about what does this look like tangibly. For me, I had to practice this literally just last night. I think you got to take, at minimum, at least 15 seconds to think on what that person just said. Take a deep breath or two before you respond. And I'm telling you, and I know for the fellas, this is one of the toughest things in the world for us to do, because we ready. We sitting there thinking as you saying it. Oh yeah, I'm you just said that. I got you. Just wait till you done talking. I got some. We're always so quick to try and call people out for how they're being a hypocrite. We're always so quick to try and tell people how they're wrong. And I think that if we take a second to just think about our response and how we're feeling ourselves, it puts us in a better state to say, right now, bro, you a little emotional. You're hyped up. You feel attacked. Then you have to move into step 3. Okay, if I know how I feel and I need to respond, I need to think about not only what I'm about to say, but how I say it to my partner so that they can hear me. And that to me is the toughest step, because no matter how long you take to respond, it's about how you say things. And too many times, even if we're right in a circumstance, we're so frustrated. And so we respond with anger. We respond with disdain. We respond with name calling or criticism. We respond with all these different, just triggers that at that point, the conversation's not healthy anymore. Right. And at that point, it's not going anywhere. And yeah, it felt good for you to get it out, but it feels even worse when now that person's hurting. You're hurting because you don't feel heard. Now you feel like they took over the conversation because it's all about them and how they're feeling now because, oh, you yelled at me, right? Um, One thing I had to do yesterday, me and my lady were having a difficult conversation about boundaries, right? And as we were having that conversation, I'm sitting there hearing the things that she's saying, and they make me feel a type of way, right? They make me feel a type of way in a lot of different aspects, but then I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I have to remember, one, she's not saying anything coming from a place of intentionally trying to hurt me. That's number one. This person is not attacking me. They're on my side. Two, we cannot, have the same perspective on this and still be on the same side, right? We're not in opposition just because we have different perspectives on this. And three, I had to pray, right? I literally had to practice that. And that's something that I don't often practice in the middle of the conversation, which is taking a second to pray before I respond to you. And I had to do that. I had to sit there and I had to pray to God, and I had to say, look, Lord, help my response come from a place that represents the man I am in you, right? That represents the love that you have poured into me and that I should be pouring into her. Help me be able to set an example that sets a foundation towards what this will look like in a godly marriage. I want to practice this right now, Lord. So I'm letting you use me, calm my spirit so that I can actually lead in this conversation the right way. And it helped. It resolved the problem because once she saw how I was approaching it, and I told her, like, look, I'm being real with you. I'm going to God about this because my human self, he wants to go off. But you deserve better than that, and I got to be better than that. And because I brought that up, she then prayed, right? And went to God. And that resolved a lot of it. And we went, our home that night on a much better basis than how she felt when she came in.
I like it.
Man, wow, that's like I said, it shows growth. It shows mindfulness. It shows patience. It shows understanding, and it shows that you are willing to submit to something in order to have an effective communication. So, anytime you pause and pray, that's one of the most powerful things that you can do. How can you be angry after you pray?
I swear.
I've had that. I've had a client be angry still after.
And it's like it truly takes a lot. If I'm pausing in this conversation to pray, and then I'm continuing the conversation, it's like I just submitted to God. I just went to God for something to help us out. So I'm not about to disrespect God by disrespecting you right after I do something. So first, let me say, man, congratulations for the growth, for the development, for the patience. And although the conversation kind of got heated, you were still able to navigate it in the right way. You prayed, she prayed, and I'm pretty sure it made the conversation a lot more effective. So that's really good. I have two things. On how to increase the communication and go from bad communication to healthy communication. The first one is identify the difference between thoughts and feelings, right? So the thoughts are, I feel like, right? Or I just believe that, right? Anytime you start that off with that, you're operating in thoughts. But you're operating in feelings when you say, I feel blank.
Yeah.
I feel hurt. I feel disrespected. I feel disappointed. Right? You target your feelings. This is about me, not about you. Now their action made you feel that way, and you can address that. But the very first thing is I feel blank. Right? Not I feel that, or I just think it's funny how blank. Those are thoughts, but we got to operate in feelings and not thoughts. Now, the second is an equation I came up with while listening to y'all. Curiosity plus empathy plus validation equals effective communication, right? So let's break it down. Curiosity. I'm curious about why do you feel the way you feel. I'm curious about what it is that you're feeling. I'm curious about why you responding the way that you're responding. I'm curious about what's underneath the thing that you're trying to give to me. I'm curious, right? And then after the curiosity, it goes empathy. Now, empathy is your ability to put yourself in other people's shoes and see things from their perspective. So although it's not your feelings that you're feeling, you are sitting in their feelings with them. Okay. And then that goes into the last part, validation. Okay, I can see how you feel that way. I can see how my anger made you feel defensive. I can see how my spending habits make you feel nervous. I can see how when I went to go talk to this young lady, you felt disrespected. It's validating. You may not agree with your partner, but you have to validate what they're experiencing to open up the door for them to even validate or sit in the things with you as well. So once again, if you have curiosity, if you have empathy, and if you have validation, that's going to open up the door for effective communication.
That's good, bro. That's good. We're on a roll, and we just sparked a whole lot of comments, bro, and questions that we gotta address. So let's pause on this. These are fire.
Let's get it.
All right, we're gonna work our way up. So Stetson K. Patton said, "How can we express our needs without sounding needy or desperate?" I like this, Coach. I almost feel like you need to go for this one because as a woman, I feel like that's a word that's really thrown on y'all a lot more. Is like you're needy, right? You always need something. Have you ever dealt with that, and how do you feel like you should navigate that?
I do say that I need. Like
Mm.
I don't try to hide that it's a need. I do need. Matter of fact, that's how I started off. I
Mm.
need. And let me tell you why you should start it off with I need is because if this man is the man that God has for you, he wants to fulfill.
Yeah.
And men like to fulfill what is needed, not
Yeah.
just what's wanted.
Yeah.
Because that makes them feel very used when you're just doing things because you want it, right?
Yeah.
But when he feels like there's a need, then he feels like that's an opportunity for him to show up as your Superman, not God, as your Superman, and be and fully own that moment. I don't think that you should hide that. And a person that makes you feel guilt around it is probably not an emotionally safe person, and that's
Yeah.
God trying to tell you it's a red flag.
Yeah.
Because if to the wrong man it's needy, to the
Mhm.
right man it's a request, and
Mhm.
it's a request that he doesn't want to overlook, because overlooking that request means he's overlooking you.
That's good. That's good. Rex, what do you got to say from the man's perspective if you feel needy? If you're trying,
Right.
if you need to express, but you don't want to quote unquote feel needy.
Right. So it takes me back to my lady, well, my wife's. That's
Yeah, yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
It feels good
I
to
wasn't gonna say your blood.
right. It's gonna be interchangeable, but it takes me back to a conversation that we had maybe on week 2, right? And this is we was on the phone and we talked about a couple of different past experiences. So I said to her, "So what are you looking for?" And she said to me, "You know what? I'm in a space where I'm not going to tell you what I'm looking for. I'm just going to watch your patterns and your actions, your behaviors, and I'm going to decide if that's something that I even want." And
Mm.
in those moments, when you have somebody that's willing to do that, then it's up to you to be as authentic as possible. So from the jump, if you have needs, you have to make them known. I need
Yeah,
my woman to do this. I
yeah,
need to feel this. Like you make your needs known, right? And if your needs are too much for that person in the beginning, then you know it's going to be too much in the middle and it's going to be too much in the end. And it's going to be the reason why the relationship ends because they can't fulfill these needs. But at the
yeah,
beginning, you say, "This is what I need from my partner." And they say, "Let's roll with it." Right.
yeah,
Then you know what you're looking at. But if you're the type of person, they act like you don't have needs, right? You allow your partner to have needs, but you act like you don't have needs. And now you're in this committed relationship. Now you just so happen to start having needs. You're going to build some conflict within your relationship because your partner has already gotten used to you not needing much from them.
yeah,
Right.
yes,
So without you feeling desperate, you just got to create a habit of pushing past those insecurities, pushing past that sense of anxiety or nervousness or uncomfortableness to ask for what you want and go ahead and do it.
yeah. There's something about the feeling of being able to tell somebody your insecurity, whatever it is that you need to be reassured about, um, and that person being able to show up for you in the way that you're asking. And I've
Absolutely.
always found that when they do that, you kind of start to realize that there was nothing for you to be insecure about in the first place.
Right.
So I think that if you want to get past whatever it is that is giving you that need, you have to express that you need it, because until it gets fulfilled, you will no longer know that it's not as bad as you thought it was. It's kind of like being hungry. When you're in the midst of hunger, it seems like the worst thing in the world. Then you eat and you can't you fill up a plate so full because your eyes are betraying you, and you can only eat a little bit of it before you full and you realize I wasn't as hungry as I thought I was.
No
Right?
facts. And can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
That leads to the D word, deprivation.
Mm,
Right? If I deprive myself of my needs, then
yeah.
I'm either going to resent my partner for not giving it to me, or I'm
Mm,
going to find a way to get it outside of my relationship. And
mm,
my partner is going to be lost and confused as to why I'm searching for something else outside the relationship, but it's all because I failed to ask for it. Right?
yeah.
We all have a need for communication. We have a need for love. We have a need for respect. We have a need for touch, both intimately and also friendly touch. So we all have these needs. And if I'm not sharing my needs or speaking of my needs or offering my needs, then I am depriving myself of what I need from my partner. And that is going to lead a relationship to destruction.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right, let's go to the next question. So, Tranquility in Wonder said, "How do you navigate being vulnerable with God in regards to communication, even when you don't feel comfortable?" Can I start this one, guys?
I was just
Mhm,
about to say,
Let's
Miles,
go.
you hit on this on a podcast. No, do your thing, brother.
Okay.
mhm.
Man, there's a few things, but the first thing I'm going to say is, and this is a logical answer for a lot of you, especially men who are very logical. God already knows. Okay, that's the first thing you got to realize. There's not a single thing that you do that he's not already aware of. I had this exact same problem when it came with my addiction to pornography and masturbation. I'm thinking that because you do it with the lights off and nobody's around and the doors are locked, oh, it's just my little secret, and God, I can't go to God about this because I feel ashamed. Right? Shame is a tool of the devil to create gaps between you and God.
That's
When you realize
good.
God already knows and there's nothing for you to be ashamed of, and he loves you regardless of your worst mistakes, then there's nothing that you can't keep from him because he already knows. He coming to you talking about some child, I've been new. I knew it from the first day you did it. I knew it before you were born. You were going to struggle with this, right? I've just been waiting for you to come have the conversation so I can show you the way out. Okay, so the thing that I want you guys to think on is the fact that when you go with God into something, it gives you strength that you don't have. Right? We always talk about the fact that the Lord would never place anything on your shoulders that you can't bear. Personally, I don't think that that's what the Bible shows us. I think the Bible shows us a lot of circumstances where people do not have the ability to do it on their own. And that's the reason why God challenges them with it. Is because you're going to have to turn to me to get through this. You don't have the strength on your human spirit to get through this struggle on your own, right? But if you walk with me, I'll show you. If you have faith in me and you trust me, I will get you through the things that you can never get through on your own. When I went with God and I was open and honest with God about everything that I did, even if I went to him, I used to have this shame about, well, God, I'd prayed to you about it every single Sunday to get me through the week without doing it. And I would do it anyway. I don't know if I should pray to him again. He probably tired of hearing me about it. When I let go of that, and I formed real relationship with God because I was talking to him every day. God, I'm dealing with this lust right now. Right? Something just came across my feed on Twitter and it just triggered me. Like, I want to go do this, Lord. Like, help remove the spirit from me. I got strength that I didn't ever have before. The Lord is already there. So you not wanting to be vulnerable is actually working counterproductive to you because he already knows. You're not keeping a secret. You got to get that out your head.
Man, that's good. That reminds me of, first of all, Miles, thank you for sharing that. Um, one thing I'm add to it is this. I have a friend in college. His name is Colin. Colin grew up in a nice, good family. But one thing that was interesting about Colin was his relationship that he had with his father. Right now, the relationship that he had with dad was super dope. They could talk about whatever. He could share whatever when it comes to relationships, when it comes to intimacy, when it comes to failures, a little bit of everything. But and he wasn't scared or anything to do that, right? Versus how a lot of people are scared to go to their parents. They're scared to have those real conversations. They're scared to say something because if they say something that their parent may agree with, they're going to be judged. The parents are going to give them a lot of backlash. That's the same way that we have to approach going to God, right? This relationship that we have is understanding that, yes, God may not want you to do certain things, but he knows we are born with a sinful nature. That's why
Mhm.
if we go to him and we repent and we wring out this sin, as your boy would say,
Mhm.
Pastor, you gotta wring it out. Once you go to him and you wring it out of you, then he knows that you're on a path of making things better. But if you act like you got to be perfect, if you act like you can only go to God when you're doing good, you act like you can only go to God when you're having your best days. God don't want that type of relationship. Like
Mhm.
Ma said, he already knows that you're sinning. He already knows that you're struggling. He wants you just to lean on him versus
Mhm.
leaning on all the other things that you've been leaning on. So that's the way I would answer that.
That's good. Coach, you got anything to add to that?
I was just gonna say
He wants raw relationships, not real ones.
Come on.
That's pretty much it.
Straight up and honest.
That's good.
Okay, we had
Good.
another question which was from Reeves Girl 1. How can you communicate to someone that gets offended a lot? Who wants to take that one first?
I'm gonna go ahead and start.
Okay.
You can't.
Hmm. Hmm.
You can't. Right? You absolutely can't. Now, one thing I would say is Myron Golden said this. It's actually his daughter's quote. He says, "The major problem in communication is believing that it actually happened." Right? It's believing that it actually happened. So if your partner isn't understanding you, two parts are true. You aren't saying it in a way that they can understand you, or two, They're just having a hard time comprehending it. But if it falls on you, if you are coming at your partner in an offensive way, if you're coming at a partner in an overreactive way, if you're coming at your partner in a disrespectful way, if you're coming at your partner in a crazy tone, it's a different ball game. So I want to challenge you to do this. And I had a couple do this during a live virtual session. They were having a hard conversation expressing emotions. And I said, do me a favor. I told the wife, I want you to go sit on his lap. Sit on his lap and hold his hand while you share with him what you're struggling with. Right? So this is going to make the closeness there. Now you're inside of each other's space. You guys are holding hands. So there's no reason to yell. There's no reason to have a crazy tone. This is you being vulnerable, being transparent. If you need to cry, then you have to cry. If you need to take a moment, take a moment. But you're with your partner. Their hands are around you. Your hands are on them, and you guys are in each other's space. Right? So, and then when it came time for him, he was sharing something that he'd never shared before. And he was looking at me while he was talking. I said, no, do me a favor. Turn to your wife. Right? Hold her hand, look at her in her eyes. And I asked him, how does it feel to share it? He said, it feels uncomfortable. I said, where do you feel it at in your body? He said, I feel it in my face. My face is getting heavy. I said, do you need to cry? He said, yeah. I said, well, give yourself permission to cry. I said, this is your wife. You're right. You know what I'm saying? If you can't be vulnerable in front of your wife, who can you be vulnerable with? If you can be vulnerable enough to be completely nude in front of them, then you can be vulnerable enough to share your feelings with them. So if you find yourself in a situation where this person is always getting offended, then maybe you need to leave that relationship because they're not even open to hearing you out.
Yeah. And that's a great point, Rex. I think we have to understand the difference between a person who has the ability to be able to respond and receive information, but they're not receiving it right because it's coming off the wrong way. Somebody's talking to them wrong. And you have to assess that. The person that asks the question, you have to assess that. Am I approaching this the right way? Or am I only approaching it in the way that I know how to approach it? Right. I know how to be super direct. I don't know how to acknowledge emotions. Right. Because if there's a reason, there's always a reason behind the triggers. If there's something that can be done on your end, you have to address that and develop in that area. Now, the flip side to that is if it is the person's personal trauma, things that are going on, and they have not gotten work done on that to identify that and get through it, you will only be able to do so much because you are not God. Okay. So you cannot communicate to people and resolve all their personal traumas. They have to go get work done on that. They need to go to a therapist. They need to go get coaching. They need to sign up for the newsletter so that way they can get the type of development that they need to be able to receive what you're trying to give them. But if they can't admit that they have a problem in the first place, then there's all this talk that we're doing means nothing because they will be unreceptive.
That's good. What about you, Coach?
I think y'all said everything. It was yeah. I'll end out this. Find someone that is coachable, not clingy. And because people that are clingy, they're also leechy. They're also very codependent. That does not equate to over, like, needy is saying I'm needing something from you, right? And if I'm constantly bringing it back to you, that means that you have not met this need. When we talk about clinging, that means that you're their life support, so you want to be in relationship with someone that is coachable, because coachable people are people that want growth and they want to move forward. Clingy people don't care if you never move because that's comfort for them. And you got to know the difference in the relationship.
That's really good. That's really good. Coach, I had switched lives real quick, so I lost. I think there was one more question in that.
Oh yeah, there is one. I've got it.
Okay.
It was Reeves Girl had a second question that says, what if one person in the relationship what if one person in the relationship, one shows empathy, I'm assuming one doesn't show empathy or take accountability for how his words and actions are affecting others. So I'm assuming from this question that wanting to know how to navigate if someone in the relationship is the person that's pretty much not empathetic, not open, not being willing to be held accountable.
I got it. I got it. So
I knew
you
you was
find
ready.
yeah, exactly. If you find yourself in a relationship with a person that is not want to be empathetic, not want to hold themselves accountable, and you are the person that are, but you want to fight for the relationship, now it's time to go to a professional,
Hmm.
right? It's time to have a mediator. It's time to be in front of somebody that one can hear you guys have a conversation, right? And then can point out your blind spots, right? Can see how much distance and how much one person withdraws and how much one person um, is disconnected from the relationship. There's this one counselor, he puts heart rate monitors on his clients, right?
Mm.
So in the conversation, if their heart rate goes above one thing, he makes them pause the conversation to ground themselves because he was just like, he's outside of his window of tolerance, right? So when you put yourself in a position to talk to a professional, you have a mediator, you have somebody that's going to give you language, you have somebody that's going to cut you off, you have somebody that's going to help you say, you know what, this is what you're hearing, but this is what your wife is trying to say. Do
Yes.
you understand that, right? So but the tricky part is when you approach a person, your partner, that's hesitant, that's resistant, and you say, hey, how would you feel about couples counseling? And they say no, now you're stuck with a decision to make. Is this something I want to fight for and something we can find a solution to? Or is this something I need to leave because he is not willing to grow or she is not willing to grow?
Yeah,
So that'll be my answer.
man. That's so good, man. And the one thing I will add to that is this: he won't be able to realize that he won't be able to change and be more empathetic until he realizes that his lack of empathy is a weakness. Right now he thinks that being so logical, this is the story with most of us as men, right? This has been me and Rex for certain for the large majority of our lives, because our emotions from a child have been conditioned by society or in your household to be a certain way as a man and be so stoic about things. um we think that that's a strength, right? But it's only a strength when it's balanced and when you know how to navigate it properly. When that's the only way that you know how to be, and that's your predominant way of being, and you can't tap into the emotional side of you when it's needed, then you actually have a weakness. You do not have a strength. And I think of Jeremiah Brown, who's a speaker, speaks to athletes, coaches, high level leaders, and executives. He put out a post, and I really loved what he said. And he said, real and effective leadership is when IQ meets EQ, right? And you got to have both, because you can know everything that you want to know. You can be strong in all those things, and how to, be analytical and have all the data and all the facts to back up what you're saying. But if you have a team or a partner that you are trying to help through a circumstance, and all you can give them is that, but you can't understand their emotions and how to meet their emotions and the things going on in their life and how you need to show up as a different type of person on certain days based on the type of emotions they're going through, well, then you can't effectively lead them. And we as men need to accept that is a part of us, that we have an emotional side to us that for all intents and purposes we neglect, and then we don't understand why we have so many problems with our wife, right? You can go to your homeboys and have simple conversations and it's easy. Well, yeah, because all of us are tired of dealing with quote unquote emotions, or you and your boys just say things in ways where y'all can curse it out and it's easy, and that don't work with your wife. You say that to your wife, now she's looking at you like you're crazy, and y'all going back and forth having war. It is not a strength to be so logical and not have no EQ backing it up. All right, Coach, do you want to go? I know you said we have about a minute and a half, I think, before this.
We have another question on the floor. It says, how long should a couple be together? This is from Chris Monique. How long should a couple be together before therapy is an option? Are you talking about married folks?
Sooner the better.
Day one time.
The sooner the better. Therapy is a preventative measure, right? Like, too many times people treat therapy like the last resort, like we have no more. I mean, and it is, don't get me wrong, but therapy works way better and even more better when you're doing it, because it's like, hey, this is maintenance. We need to get on top of this. We're seeing some issues that haven't broken the relationship, but if they don't get addressed, they will, right? I think you got to get on this earlier than later. Do it before you get married.
So my response and the question is, how soon should a couple go see a counselor, right?
20 seconds.
So what I say is this: as soon as you decide that this is a person that you can spend the rest of your life with, when you start thinking about engagement, that's the time to lock in and say, you know what? Before we lock into a covenant, let's make sure that we have our communication. Let's make sure we have our values. Let's make sure that we are in alignment with what our future looks like. But prior to that, you need your own counseling to make sure you have your own blind spots.
That's a fact. I love that. You need personal and you need couples.
Yep.
That's good. I think, guys, I think it's still recording, so that's perfect. But thank you guys, all of you. First off, before you all leave, make sure y'all click that link at the bottom and join our email, our newsletter, guys. So that way, you know, when these lives are coming out, you have access to everything that we're offering to you guys, because we have some powerful things coming up to help you as an individual and as a couple be able to make it, right? Because you're trying to make it through some things so that you can actually be able to experience the true love and joy that God has ordained for you out there. So I'm Miles Harris. I'm so happy to be here with you guys and blessed to have this crew here. Rex.
Absolutely. It's your boy Rex Howard Jr., the relationship and sex therapist. Listen, guys, I want to help you take your life, your relationship, your personal development, your emotional intelligence to the absolute next level this year. So if you are a man looking for a space to develop, to evolve, and you want to meet up every single morning and have some extra accountability, have a thing called the Morning Mastery Meetup, and we meet every Monday through Friday from 6:55 a.m. to 7:50 a.m. All you have to do is go to my Instagram page and go to I am Rex Howard Jr. Click on the bio to sign up for that. Now, secondly, if you are needing counseling or coaching for your relationship, for sexual dysfunctions, for any type of issues, go to resolvecc.com and book a session. I'll get you taken care of.
Love it. And I'm Coach Lauren J., your marriage and relationship coach. Right now, we've got our 5-day challenge that's happening from roommates to soulmates. It's our marriage challenge for top of the year. So if you want to join, you still got time to join the challenge. You can click the link in my bio, and you can register real quick. It's a free challenge. You don't worry, we got no Zoom meetings. Okay, I'm in your emails. I'm in your inbox, helping you win at relationships. So I'm really excited about that. And for the ladies, we do a Becoming Your Best Self morning call at 5 a.m. Central Standard Time, 6 a.m. Eastern. And it is powerful every morning. And you really get to walk away from our community feeling and prepared to like own and win your day and really become your best self. Because as the women and the intercessors, if you will, it's important that we ground ourselves before life starts lifing us in the morning. So make sure you click the link in my bio. You can register. If you're not a morning person, just register. The replay come out at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, 9 a.m. Eastern for all the Bedside Baptist people. So it's been great. I've enjoyed our time together. We didn't held on past our little hour. So thank y'all for being with us. We're going to catch you next Tuesday, same time, same place right here. And y'all let us know in the chat or in our comments, how has this live impacted your life? And we look forward to impacting it for more.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Out. Peace.
Peace.